Hey, how's it going everyone? This is Dominic and you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I've got another wrap-up list for all of you. 2023 is nearing its end, and I couldn't let it end without giving my top 10 DC comic reads of 2023. Before we dive into the list, I will say not all of these were released in the calendar year of 2023, though some were. Rather, these are my picks of books I have read in 2023 from DC Comics. I hope the list is fresh and fun for all of you. Before we dive in though, I just want to shout out our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, I highly encourage you to check out their website. You can find a link to it in the video's description. If you find something you like, you can even use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate code or link to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's get started with today's list. First on our list today, though in no particular order, we have Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow by Tom King and Bilquis. This is a really high contender for my favorite book of the year, so of course it belongs on this list of my favorite DC comics of this year. I first heard about this book being a kind of newer Tom King fan, and I heard that in the new DCU kind of film universe, they're hoping to adapt this story for a Supergirl property. At any rate, I was finally able to track down this book, and I could not put it down. The art is lush, vibrant, dreamy, and beautiful, and the storytelling from King is one of my favorites. His more lyrical prose style has always been something I've enjoyed since encountering him a couple years ago, and I think it absolutely serves the narrative here. We have some great narration from one of the primary characters, and it made me care about this character that I didn't really know a ton about. Supergirl is someone I've always seen in big events or appearing in random comic books. I am culturally aware of Supergirl, of course, but I had never read a solo Supergirl book prior to this book, and I have to say it definitely makes me want to read more Supergirl content out there. But just as a standalone read for someone pretty new to Supergirl comics, and you can absolutely enjoy this book. I don't think you need any previous reading to just pick this up off the shelf and to really read a great standalone kind of coming of age science fiction spacefaring buddy comedy epic. I know it's really genre bending, but it's a beautiful piece of fiction. I can't wait to hopefully see this get upgraded into a hardcover edition in the coming year. But for right now, I have this trade paperback, and frankly, it's just a blast. The artwork again is so fun and interesting. It has this dreamy, surrealist quality that absolutely serves the storyline. The characters are compelling and unique, and I just really like how it not only plays with genre, but it really has some deep thematic points throughout. Again, I can't speak highly enough about this book. It's an absolute blast, a high recommend from me. If you haven't checked out Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, get on out there and try to get a copy. It definitely has my recommendation. Next up on my favorite DC Comics list 2023, another Tom King book, Batman Killing Time. This is another great standalone Batman graphic novel, and frankly, it was one of my favorites this year. I'm a huge Batman fan, and I feel like there's so much to enjoy in this story, and you don't have to know a ton about the Caped Crusader to enjoy the ride. This book takes place, or it's set rather, in the beginning of Batman's career, kind of earlier in his time as the Dark Knight. It features characters like Batman, of course, and then Catwoman and the Riddler, to name a few. There's also a couple characters I had never encountered before, and overall, it's just a really compelling kind of mystery story. The narration is really fascinating, and there's quite a good twist by the end of this book, and I just think overall, it's just really smartly made, well plotted. The characters all feel true to form, incredible action sequences, and the art throughout it is absolutely gripping. Really good sense of action, pacing, and it's really absolutely just a page turner. If you enjoyed Tom King's Batman run, or even if you weren't the biggest fan, I still encourage you either way to check out this book. I think for people that not only like reading Batman runs, but just enjoy reading a kind of standalone feeling graphic novel or mini-series, you can get in, enjoy the story, and get out. This is definitely one to check out. I know DC's been churning out a lot of these kind of Batman mini-series and graphic novels in recent years, and I'm worried this one might have flown under the radar of a lot of Batman fans out there. I'm happy I heard about it. I was tracking down as much Batman Tom King content as I could find personally, and this one really sets itself apart. I feel like it feels different than a lot of the Batman run. And I think that overall, that's a good thing. It feels very crisp and fresh. I love that they said it earlier in Batman's career. You have this feeling that he's a bit of a newer, greener Batman. And again, I just think it's a really good book. I reviewed it earlier this year, but even as I'm talking about it, I want to go back into these pages and enjoy it again for a reread. It's just that good. Don't miss out on Batman Killing Time. And hey, if you're watching this video and you're enjoying the content and you have yet to subscribe to the channel, just want to invite you to do so. I'm always doing lists, comic book reviews, shorts, and more. Thanks for considering. Now on with the list. Next up, for Best DC Comics of 2023, I have to give it to Superman American Alien by Max Landis. This is a book that showed up on my radar after a friend recommended it. I am admittedly a Superman fan, and I'm a sucker for those early kind of origin-esque Superman stories, and there are a lot of them, and I had never heard of this one. Max Landis is a comic creator I was not familiar with. I know he's kind of a controversial figure, but reading this book just in and of itself, I found it to be really enjoyable. It's basically a set of kind of loosely connected little vignettes or stories. It has kind of an anthology feel, and it's kind of the coming of age, early days of Superman. All of them are written by Max Landis, and each issue has its own artist, and read together, you just get a really cool picture of the Man of Steel. You have stories from his boyhood, adolescence, early adulthood, and days in Metropolis, meeting characters like Lois Lane, Lex Luthor, and just starting to save the day as Superman. With all of the different artists on this book, you get a really good sense of variety and range, even though you have a nice, solid narrative voice from Max Landis, the writer, throughout all of it. I really love this book. I think all the comic creators, especially the artists, are really just standouts. I absolutely love the different visual styles we got. This book has a lot of just kind of fun to it. There's a levity to a lot of the stories, although some are a little bit dark, but I think that, again, you get a variety here, and I think that for an anthology, it's amazing how many of these stories just hit. It's a beautifully made standard size hardcover from DC Comics, and again, it's one I would recommend for fans of Superman. I like this as well because you don't need to have any previous knowledge of Superman or Superman comics to pick it up and enjoy it. It does have a good kind of standalone comic book feel to it. You can almost read it like a graphic novel, and having these each individual issues feeling like a short story or kind of vignette in this anthology, you can kind of pick it up, leave it on a shelf, come back to it later, or you can do what I did and try to read it as close to cover as you can. Either way, a fantastic reading experience, and probably my favorite Superman story I read in 2023. Okay, so excited to talk about this one. For 2023, Batman the Knight was an absolute standout for me. Written by one of my favorites, Chip Zdarsky, this is set in the period of Bruce Wayne's kind of adolescence, boyhood, into manhood, prior to when he dons the cape and cowl and becomes Batman. This fills into the gap of what happened when he left Gotham and he tried to get trained by the world's best in all these different fields before returning to Gotham to become Batman. This is such a great kind of interstitial kind of book here. I feel like it really just slots in a kind of missing chapter I had always wanted to read. Of course, there's been glimpses of this in different works. It's hinted at as well in so many, but to do a whole kind of mini or maxi series covering this period was just a masterstroke, and I think in the hands of Zdarsky, it is really something to behold. Yes, you can read it as a standalone graphic novel. No, you don't need any history or background with the character, but certainly if you're a fan of Batman, the Bat family, the Bat universe in general, there are plenty of great kind of assets, characters, Easter eggs that you will enjoy. It also pays homage to a lot of characters in some unique ways, and the art throughout it is spectacular, as you can safely see here. How it's set up, overall, it really just goes chronologically, following Bruce as he goes throughout the world, gaining all of these different skills, like costuming, shadowcraft, fighting, and all of these different facets of what will make Batman great. This book also has some fun ties to the James Tynion era of Batman, which I thought were notable and interesting, and overall it was again just one of my favorite graphic novels of 2023, easily on my favorite DC Comics list for 2023. This is just a real standout, and for me, I mentioned it in my review of this title, I had no idea this book was in work until the hardcover was already released, and I had to try to get it as fast as I could, and wow did I burn through this book. Such a fun read. I look forward to rereading it sometime in the future. I'm so happy to showcase it because I just frankly love talking about it. If you like Batman or you want to get into him, you want to read kind of an earlier days origin-like story, definitely pick up Batman the Knight by Chip Zdarsky. Next up, we have Green Lantern Earth 1 Volume 1 by Gabriel Hardman. This was a book that was on my to-read list for some time. I was actually able to pick up a used copy of this at a local used comic shop, and frankly, this was just a blast for me to read. The writing was all really solid, but to me, the visual storytelling is what really sold this piece for me. Not only the character models, which were a bit more jagged-edged, sketchy looking in a really beautiful way, but all the green lighting effects and kind of science fiction creatures, planets, technologies, everything was so really well defined and so immersive. I felt myself so engaged to the storyline, and the art was such a huge part of that. Yes, this is a Green Lantern origin story of a kind. It's set in that Earth 1 universe, which is basically a separate DC universe. You can read these as standalone graphic novels. In fact, that's how they were published. These weren't individual issues. They were books released like this. And frankly, it's a great reading experience. You can read these cover to cover and feel like you're getting a great origin story. I already reviewed this along with Batman Earth 1 and some of Superman Earth 1 for those interested. I know there's other titles out there too, like Wonder Woman Earth 1, Teen Titans Earth 1. Pardon me if I'm forgetting any others, but if you've read those, let me know in the comments what you think of them, or generally DC's Earth 1. Frankly, I don't know what I expected of this book, but I will say it exceeded my expectations. Again, the art absolutely elevated this piece for me, but I found myself really enjoying the origin story. And make no mistake, it is a Hal Jordan Green Lantern origin story with a lot of very clear homages to the traditional DC Universe origin, but it's just spun out in a new way. It feels very contemporary, very modern, and just very stylish and cool. I've seen mixed reviews on this volume, and frankly, that's when I can find reviews for this at all. I don't know why so many people are sleeping on this title. I, for one, thoroughly enjoyed it. Granted, I'm a fairly casual Green Lantern fan. I mostly just love the Green Lantern Jeff Johns run from years back, but overall it is a cool character and I really just enjoyed this origin story. Definitely recommend it. Next on our DC top list of 2023, we're going to be looking at Batman One Bad Day Clayface by Colin Kelly and Jackson Lanzing. These co-writers have definitely produced something special here, and the artist as well should absolutely be commended. Romanico just turns in some incredible work here. I love this story. It is a Clayface story. We follow him to Hollywood as he's trying to be an aspiring young actor again. He kind of makes his way through friends, acquaintances, and the studio system to try to promote his career. Along the way, he finds himself changing faces, absorbing people, and whatnot, doing just generally bad Clayface things. But everything is just super insidious and just behind the scenes enough that at first you don't notice these missing people as Clayface goes on this spree, and things just really begin to spiral out of control. Yes, this is part of the Batman One Bad Day big box, this big event they did with all of these cool one-shots for all of these Batman villains, but this is among one of my favorites. I also almost included the One Bad Day Riddler by Tom King, which was another one of my favorite DC books of 2023, but I thought for the case of this video, I'd go with Clayface. I really like these co-writers. After becoming fans of them, reading Batman Beyond, Neo Year, getting to meet them at my local comic shop, again, just a fan, and when I saw them attached to this book, and Clayface is already a character I really enjoy within the Batman mythos, I was kind of set up to like this book, and yet it still exceeded any expectation I had. It not only punched out against so many of the other Batman One Bad Day titles, I think it can really just read as a fun, standalone Clayface Batman story. I don't think you need a lot of background reading to enjoy this one. I like this stylish, standard size hardcover. It is a shorter work, but wow, it just packs a really good punch. I love the artwork, like I said, it's really just gorgeous, and when we see the kind of intense Clay effects, when we see him kind of battling with his own arguably mental illness and personality issues, it's all just very frightening and interesting, and just, yeah, I really felt like this brought something new to the table, and I was here for it. Loved this book. Really hope more people give it a chance. Next on our list, we have Catwoman Lonely City by Cliff Chiang. This is a book that was on my list after hearing so many people love it last year, actually, and I had an opportunity to get a copy from Organic Price Books. Definitely check out their website again. But anyway, this is really an art book first in my mind, and a just general comic book second. The art is absolutely gorgeous by Cliff Chiang. Over here, he's doing double duty as both writer and illustrator, and what we have is a wonderful story set largely be in a kind of, dystopian future Gotham City. We have Selina Kyle, the Catwoman, getting out of prison after serving time following a terrorist event. Basically, she's released onto Gotham streets, and the world's moved on without her. A lot of her old favorite supporting cast of characters have either gone, changed, or want nothing to do with her for the most part, and she's basically trying to solve one last mystery, trying to do one more thing to help assist Batman, and that really brings her on this kind of hero's journey arc. I love the fact that this is set in the future. I love that Selina Kyle, who is usually so spry, elegant, graceful, and strong, has to find a new kind of strength as she has an aging body and is not as able to do what she used to do. We also have this delightful kind of fish out of water story where we have her trying to adapt to this world that is, again, kind of passed her by, moved on without her. And I think that the way all of this was handled was absolutely lovely. I think also having it in this fun, kind of boxy, oversized format, it just really showcased the art well. When you spread this, the double pages look like a landscape picture. It's so just cinematic, beautiful, jaw-dropping. The coloring and just the art style from Chiang just really pop right from the page. It does feel kind of like a modern pop art kind of piece, and overall, it's just a lot of fun. I do think the storyline is really great, and I don't mean to undersell it just because I've talked about the art so much. The story itself is great. In fact, this is one of my favorite Catwoman stories of all time. This is a high recommend for me, and another one, if you haven't noticed this pattern, another one I think you can read without really needing a lot of other backstories or reading or prerequisites. You can just pick this up and enjoy it as a standalone graphic novel. Next up on our Best of DC Comics 2023, our first omnibus in this video, Batman and Robin by Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason Omnibus. Wow, what a ride this was. This was a run that I had only ever really read the first maybe 7 issues or so in the first small hardcover when it was released, gosh, over a decade ago now. I heard people say how much fun this entire run was, and I had an opportunity to pick up this book, and I'm just elated I did. I really feel like this is a good companion run for things like Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's Batman run, along with Grant Morrison's Batman run, especially the tail end of it with Batman Incorporated. This is a book that it does hold up on its own quite well, but I feel like with DC editorial, this thing really had to kind of jump and dance and kind of play the part to fit into all of these other major story arcs. We had Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo sharing their epics that really shifted the status quo for Batman, and we certainly had that happen with Grant Morrison's conclusion in Batman Incorporated. And because both of these other runs that were happening simultaneously had large impacts on the Caped Crusader, I almost felt like Gleason and Tomasi kind of got the short end of the stick. I feel like for the most part, they had to adjust some of the narrative to fit around kind of these storytelling bits. Overall, I think that they did extremely well, but I think if you were to read this in a vacuum without reading Snyder's run or Morrison's, you might be a little bit lost. While this is really well mapped, has a great table of contents, beautiful oversized artwork, we don't have a lot of exposition that just explains what happens in some of the other comic book creators' runs on other adjacent Batman titles at the time. Because of that, again, things can get a little funny here, but overall, this is a wonderful book, easy to read from cover to cover. It really highlights the father-son relationship between Bruce Wayne and Damian Wayne, and it's easily one of the Bat books that has the most heart of any I've ever read. I love seeing Bruce as a father. I love seeing the son of Batman just trying to come of age and do his own thing. There are definitely some tearjerker moments here, and even though it may not have been the premier Batman run of the time, I think it's an absolute classic. It should absolutely be read. So happy to have it on the bookcase. Next book for my Best DC Comics, another omnibus. This time it's Grayson, the omnibus by Tim Seeley, Tom King, and Mikel Janin. This is a fascinating book. I know I've done a full review of it on the channel, but for those that maybe don't know, this entire book follows Dick Grayson, once Nightwing, who is now a secret agent in a kind of covert organization called Spiral. This is a kind of clandestine spy organization that is very, very shady, and we learn right at the beginning that Dick Grayson is there to try to topple this organization from the inside. It's a really fantastic book, and with Seeley and Tom King co-writing, it has this really, really cool quality. Like I said, it feels like a spy book. Think James Bond with a bit more humor, and you're not far off. Yes, it's a superhero book, but it's a spy thriller, espionage, political thriller first. Really wonderful stuff here, and Mikel Janin, who I'm used to as an incredible Batman artist, is in rare form here in the pages of Grayson. It's an incredible book. It has the entire Grayson run, along with some of the Robin War tie-in issues, which maybe felt a little bit of out of place in this volume, but still happy to have it. A really great book to read cover to cover. I love what we get to learn about Dick Grayson in this book. Even though he's largely not Nightwing within the pages, it's cool to see Dick Grayson for just being the good guy he is, especially when he's stretched to his absolute limits. The art is all incredible, and like I said, for fan of this genre, the kind of spy thriller, you really aren't going to find much better in the world of comics, particularly mainstream Big Two Marvel DC comics. It's easily one of my favorite spy comics of all time, and to have Dick Grayson as the lead, this is just a masterstroke. I think this is up there for me with something like Superior Spider-Man, where you hear the concept on paper, and you're like, is this going to work? And it just ends up being kind of a hit. If you haven't read Grayson, it's definitely one I would recommend. It was one of my standouts of 2023. I'm so happy I finally had an opportunity to read this book. I'm a huge fan of Dick Grayson, whether he's Nightwing or not, and this is just another prime example as to why. Don't miss out on Grayson. And the final entry for me today for Best DC Comics of 2023 is definitely the Infinite Crisis Omnibus from DC Comics. I have read Infinite Crisis, the event itself, in prior years, but this year I had my opportunity to read the entire event, the tie-ins, everything in this massive omnibus. This was an absolute hit for me. While it might not have been my favorite DC book of the year, it's easily in my top 10. This is incidentally my favorite DC comic event I've ever had the pleasure of reading, and I enjoyed that when I had just read Infinite Crisis, let alone all of the incredible tie-ins that are in this omnibus. For fans of DC Comics, if you've not read Infinite Crisis, or maybe you have read it like me, but you haven't read all the tie-ins like in this omnibus, definitely pick it up. It was so worth the upgrade for me. I loved all the extra content we got. One of my favorite things about this work is that we not only get a showcasing of some really fun characters, but we really get a feel for the entire DC universe. With all the miniseries and the event itself, we just get so many different pockets of this incredible comic book universe, and the world just feels fuller after reading something like this. I love that you can get a good event omnibus, that you don't just follow a specific character or team of characters, you kind of follow the whole universe, for whatever that's worth. We have some incredible creators on this book. The art is almost always fantastic. There is a level of visual continuity, I feel like, as you even change artists among some of the miniseries. Everything feels very similar, or similar enough that I'm not distracted by changing art styles. The book itself, for being this massive, holds up pretty good. The event itself absolutely is great on reread, but reading this event in context of all these tie-ins in this omnibus, it's just something to behold. I've never really had a reading experience quite like this, and I just felt so full after I finished this book. I felt just so accomplished. This is a great book. I highly recommend it for people that are maybe on the fence. Infinite Crisis is worth it, and it's one of my favorites of 2023, without a doubt. And that's going to wrap up my list of top 10 DC comic book collected editions for 2023. All of these books I immensely enjoyed in their own way. I reviewed most, if not all, on my channel throughout the year, but frankly, it was so fun revisiting, even putting these videos together. I absolutely loved my time with these books. I think there's a little something for everyone. I tried to prioritize books that not only were my standout favorites, but ones I think are easily accessible for those that maybe want to try them out without needing to read a bunch of backstory. Some of these serve as just great standalone reads. Some of them are quicker, some are quite dense, and I hope we have a little something for everyone. But I'm sure I missed out on some great DC Comics this year, so in the comments I would love to hear what are some of your favorite picks for DC Comics in 2023. Again, it could be books that came out in 2023 or you had the opportunity to read in 2023. Either way, I want to hear about it. I want to hear if you liked the books I picked. If you didn't, just let me know your thoughts, and thank you so much for watching this year. I really appreciate it, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to give this video a like, maybe check out one of my other ones, and don't forget to share this with someone. Have a good one.